think that is in so many reasons why Gen Z is not just the leaders of the future, we're the leaders of today, is because we don't have time to waste. We are inheriting problems that are much bigger than us and require immediate action.
Deja, I think that's so powerful and interesting to hear. I've been saying to many people that I think the 2020s will be the new 60s, that I think that there will be the kinds of significant game-changing debates and discussions about everything from love to war, from capitalism to work, from race to gender. And hearing you lay that out as you did, I think reaffirms or affirms that. What kind of reception are you, though, getting back from your parents and your parents' generation as you were engaging in these uncomfortable conversations?
This is intergenerational work. The same way that we are inheriting the problems created from whether my parents' generations or older, we are also inheriting their successes, right? We are inheriting their wins. And in that way, social justice work is like a relay race. My mom handing the baton off to me and me off to the women I work with. And so in that sense, we have to recognize about these intergenerational partnerships and what we have to learn from each other. So I will say that there's so much to learn from the elders in this movement, the people who have been doing this work, who were active, in fact, in the 60s, who are still around to inform the work that we do today. But those people are also those who are holding more power, whether that be in the workforce or politically. And so it is their job to also listen and learn from the wisdom that young people have, right? The insight and the lived experiences that we bring to the table and the perspective that we have as the people who are realistically going to inherit the work that we do.
But I'm going to throw in a slightly sour note here. Maya, what about those who would say both you and Deja have a very particular worldview, and while you want to be inclusive is the opinion that you want of a very particular strand, are you less open to views that don't coincide with your own, which is something that some people might find difficult?
It's really important to, recognize that when it comes to, kind of different views, there are kind of different levels to what you're speaking to. Sometimes there is simply a lack of awareness or a lack of education around a certain topic. I think that there's a lack of empathy in some cases, because you can even, for example, look to talking about racial injustice. Being a Black woman, this is something I've always spoken to, even in my work within sustainability. Environmental racism is a very real issue. It's across the U.S. And across the globe, where Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities are more adversely affected by environmental issues like climate change, like pollution. As I kind of spoke to some of those topics, starting out, a lot of people just didn't see the relevance. A lot of people just did not see how this related to the overall, goal to working to a more sustainable future, because there was that kind of lack of empathy and lack of understanding in that way. And so, I think that, in terms of if, I'm not open to people who don't agree with me, I have to remember, first of all, is this a matter of people needing to just understand more around this topic and just need to be more aware? Or is this a matter of almost of survival, at the same time? Because we're at a pretty dire place in a lot of social and environmental crises. And so sometimes it is a matter of having to kind of continue to push forward because of the fact that those people are not really contributing to help make a difference in a kind of final countdown, sort of a lot of these issues.
But Deja, if I can put it in a slightly different way, people can agree on the problem, but they may disagree on the solution. So in the case of a company, if it takes a political stance on something where there isn't necessarily an agreement on how to solve a particular problem, doesn't that put some employees off who don't agree with their stance?
I think the corporate example is an interesting one, because companies will always hold more power than an individual employee. And so it is a power imbalance. But I think ultimately, Maya said this earlier, that people vote with their dollars, and companies taking political stands realize they have to, because that is what our generation, Gen Z, is demanding of them, but also what is going to find them success financially, right? And, I'm not sure I can point to a specific example of what you mean with this disagreement between employer and employee.
But religion, sexuality, those are the kind of things that people disagree about, aren't they?
I think Maya said this beautifully, that there are levels to disagreement, and that I personally don't consider it to just be a political disagreement when someone denies someone else's humanity based on their identity. And that is not something I entertain, and nor that I consider to just be something up for debate.
Deja Fox, Maya Penn, what an absolute pleasure to have both of you. Thank you very, very much. I really hope that you guys will join us again in the future, and I'm excited about what comes next in this world of ours.
And Maya, have a great birthday.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Thank you both.
So Deja and Maya are the same age as my children. There's a confession, a similar age to my children. And I think what defines that generation is that they have such a can-do attitude, which you saw in spades in that conversation. Nothing gets in the way. There's a fearlessness that I certainly didn't have at their age. And I really love that. I love the fact that they don't see problems. They see solutions, and there's no sense of deference to an older generation. It's like, this is what we want to do. If we don't know, we're going to find out, because we can Google it, and suddenly the way has been opened. If I don't know how to code, I'll teach myself. That is amazing.
Well, it was also interesting to hear Deja talk about what Dr. King used to famously call the fierce urgency of now. And his encouragement in the 60s to, the Gen Zers of that era to take up challenges now, do things that might be uncomfortable for parents and grandparents, because the weight of these things was so heavy. And so hearing her say, we've got to act now and we can't afford to be slow moving, that also was intriguing to hear that sense of urgency. And she called it, at another point, the Amazon generation. We want it now.
It is interesting, isn't it? They managed to combine individualism with a sense of a wider society. What will be interesting to see is when these ideas, these kind of young people who have a very idealistic vision of the world, when they come up against, if you like, let's call them political obstacles, people with different views, how is that going to shake down? Are they going to be willing to accommodate? Are they going to tone down some of those ideas? Will there be some sort of compromise, or will this very strong, very clear idealism triumph for them?
Yeah, it will be. There will be a lot to watch. It feels like there will be many different participants in the public conversation in the years to come. Gen Z, to some extent, millennials in a meaningful way. Gen X, still some boomers. So I'm intrigued to see what that will mean on some of the big issues of the day.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of When Catty Met Carlos, a co-production from the BBC World Service
and Aussie Media. If you liked it, subscribe to our podcast and you'll never miss an episode.
This is the BBC World Service. Harriet Gilbert brings us February's World Book Club.
I'm joined by American author Bill Bryson to discuss his #1 bestseller, Notes from a Small Island. An affectionate portrait of a country he'd lived in for 20 years, Bryson's book has become one of the most loved explorations of Britain and its eccentricities.
World Book Club with Bill Bryson at bbcworldservice.com/World Book Club. Digital Radio Mondial takes radio to a new age. With multimedia, audio, text and pictures, as well as a wide range of content, it truly is radio in the digital age.
the BBC and Digital Radio Mondiale. Better radio